Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Just Economy Podcast. The Just Economy Podcast is sponsored by the Community Reinvestment Alliance of Florida. I am your host, Cornell Cruz Jr. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Reinvestment Alliance of Florida. We are a statewide membership organization encouraging the banks, the community, government, and the nonprofit organizations to invest in our communities, in particular low to moderate income communities. So again, welcome to the show. We got a very special guest today. We're going to talk a little bit about money. So this is a big one for all of you, especially nonprofits. So before we get to our guest, I want to go over a couple of things. So July 31st, we just closed the second round of the Nonprofit Capacity Building Project grants. We closed that at midnight on the 31st. And I must say, I have to thank every last one of you. We received 101 applications for this round. 101. And this round just serves Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties. So we got 101 applications from nonprofits in search of funding. This particular grant is a capacity building grant, which means you could apply for the grant from everything from auditing all the way to staffing, and it was up to $20,000. Then we also added a caveat. Organizations who need to do a 990, need to do an audit, need to file financial paperwork, they could apply for grants up to $5,000. Their budgets had to be $500,000 or less. So by you guys applying for these grants, that gives us the opportunity to go back to the financial institutions. By the way, this was sponsored by Truist Bank and Comerica Bank, their community development grants that they gave us to service these particular grants. By you providing all those applications, that gives me fuel to go back to the other financial institutions and say, here is a need. It's definitely a need, and we need you to help fill it. We all know about the federal funding and grants and how money is being cut these days for the nonprofits. So this is a very, very good thing. Granted, it's highly competitive, and it's supposed to be. But it's highly competitive, but by you participating in our particular project and in this particular grant-making process is what helps me drive for more funding in order to fund this particular program. So I want to thank you. If nothing else, even if you're not awarded, we really want to thank you for being a part of this particular project. We'll announce awardees on September 22nd, 2025, with checks going out the very next week. So I look forward to doing that. I look forward to seeing your videos and all the things I need you to do as far as the reporting is concerned. I look forward to that. And again, thank you so much. Also, on October 5th, we'll be hosting our Bankers Roundtable. Site to be determined at this particular time. We're going to invite the financial institutions, their bankers, the community reinvestment officers will be there. Community foundations will be there as well. And we're gonna let you pick their brains about how they're going to do funding, how they look at filling this funding gap, especially federally and state, and how they're going to help work around this funding gap that is coming, and something I honestly believe we're going to see for the next few years. Our guest today is going to talk about some of those things and helping with funding. And since I couldn't stop talking about it, let's get to it. So today, our guest today is Ruth Rios. She is founder of the Generosity Strategies. I felt that as community-based organizations are going through challenging times, especially concerning funding, CRAF needs to bring on people with knowledge to help us get through these times. And Ruth is an expert at it. She helped ran probably one of the biggest fundraising days that we have in Miami-Dade County, or the biggest, I think. So I want to welcome Ruth Rios. How are you doing today, Ruth?
Thank you for having me, Cornell. I'm doing great.
Good. So we're going to talk about funding, fundraising, I think is the better way to put it, something that I truly hate. So I feel your pain. And Ruth calms me down when I talk to her. It makes my skin crawl, honestly. I don't mind giving, but I hate asking, you know.
You're not the only one. I get it.
So Ruth is going to help us with that and talk about her company and how she helps organizations provide that funding. So let's get right into it. So Ruth, before we start, please tell us a little about you. I love people's histories. How did you get here? How did you get there? What drove you to this work? So tell us a little bit about yourself and your history.
Yes. So, as many of the founders who launch nonprofits, I too participated and joined in nonprofit world from a personal story. I actually got into fundraising after I spent 8 years in foster care, and from the age of 10 to 18, I lived in foster care. And I aged out and was asked to come and share my story at a fundraising luncheon. I had no idea what was going to happen. I was just told to be authentic and brave. I was 18 years old, and I shared my story, and that kind of got me into the kick of storytelling and fundraising when I saw 500 people pull out their checkbooks and impact the mission.
Okay.
And so, my personal story is really involved in the way that I've connected with the foster care agencies. Still today, I serve on boards, but that was what launched my career in the nonprofit world and in fundraising, and I've been doing it ever since.
So I'm taking it when you look at us, because I got to include myself in this. When you look at us as community-based organizations and see our fundraising need, my first question to you is, what is the worst thing that you see about us as we're not doing what we should be doing as far as fundraising is concerned?
So I think that a lot of fundraisers, nonprofit individuals, get into the work because it's first a heart passion, right? We either were the breast cancer survivor who is now paying it back, the foster child who had a safe upbringing and care and now is making sure that other kids in there have it as well, right? Individuals like yourself who are invested in the growth for nonprofits. We all come from it with a mission mind that's like, I want to change the world. I want to create an impact. The problem is that none of us really know how to properly run a business like a nonprofit. And so we get in our way when it comes to pipelines and fundraising and operations. And there is not a conversation that I have with one of my clients who tells me, oh, this fundraising thing really just gives me the ick. I've been fundraising for over 15 years. I get it. Mm-hmm. The churn and burn is real. And so I think we get in the middle of ourselves when we try to be too not ourselves. When we are authentic with donors and we connect with individuals, relationships is what matters.
Okay, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a pervasive idea out there that I got to change myself to adhere to what the funder or potential funder may like.
Yes.
I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to do the wrong thing. I have
assimilate.
I have to assimilate. I have to dress correctly. I have to make sure that I keep my hands down, and things like that.
And there is a sense of professionalism that comes with philanthropy, right? The word development, advancement, philanthropy, all of those are big words that if you just have a heart passion for serving people, you don't know. And I always say nonprofit world and the fundraising specifically, it's not something that you kind of like go to school for. There is one that I know of, one philanthropy school in the entire country. But other than that, you kind of start at the bottom and you climb because you love it and you enjoy it and you participate and you see lives being changed. And so unless you're in a professional setting in that way, 50% of nonprofits, for example, that participate and give Miami-Dade are teeny tiny with budgets under $500,000 or less. And so those are all the founders who start something and then get stuck with imposter syndrome, with lack of support. Let's talk about that, right? How do you build capacity? How do you scale when you're a team of one, maybe not even able to take a salary from your own nonprofit?
So I got to go back to something you said. Philanthropy school?
Yes. I am blanking on the name right now. You're going to have to link it in your show notes. But, yes, there actually is. There's two. The sector in the professional world of it is actually getting a lot better. So you have the CFRE, which is a designation for fundraising professionals and experts. It really now is a highly sought out license and certification you can get. And then there is a university that teaches on philanthropy and everything that you would be tested on in the CFRE. But it's rare to find people with a CFRE, and it's also rare to know somebody who went through philanthropy or advancement training prior to actually joining the career.
Okay, that that's crazy to me that there's a philanthropy school, but I shouldn't be shocked because there's a school for everything. But I am. So the rest of us are out here trying to pick it up as we go, right?
Building the plane while flying it.
Yeah, building the plane while flying it, which is what most entrepreneurs do. Is what practically every job. I'm a firm believer in that entrepreneurs jump off a cliff and make the parachute on the way down. It's interesting that we take on something like that without having real experience in it. We may look at the big boys and you get the letter or the email asking you to give this, or something I've been seeing that's been on my TV like every 2 minutes. The dogs and the animals that are not are not being fed properly, and folks are
humane society.
Yeah, humane.
Right.
I get that like every 2 minutes. Every 2 minutes is on my screen. So that's what we have a tendency to learn by. But is that, especially for smaller organizations, is that even feasible for us to do it that way?
No. So I'm a huge proponent of using your personal story, right, to move people into expressing their gratitude through generosity. People ask me, what do you do? And I usually say fundraiser for the sake of it, but I really say I help people express their values through generosity. And so when you can build a relationship with a donor and through your authentic self, then yes, that's when the actual deep support comes from communities, and be it with, your organization or be it with an actual philanthropist. I think people just think, I'm going to post because I don't want to be seen. It's very unnerving to be a fundraiser. And that's kind of how I got it. I kind of skipped it. It's kind of how I got into generosity strategies and launching it. So about halfway through in my career, I had sat in some pretty amazing teams, big teams, and then I took on this role with this expanding new region. And I remember being stuck, not knowing how to do a task or a specific project that my boss had asked me to do. And I kind of said, hey, I'm kind of stuck, but I didn't really express I am 8 years. You hired me for this job, and I don't know how to do it. And that's a really hard place, mostly when there's no real training, unless you've had the opportunity to sit in some great teams. And so I realized, even having sat in those great teams, I'm kind of stuck. And this is like professional suicide if I admit this, but I also need the help. And so he recognized it. Thank you. You know who it is. And said, go get a coach. And then I found a coach. And then I actually worked with that coach over 6 years at my other organizations. And so she was part of my agreement, my employment agreement. I needed to bring my coach on. And I said, if you want me to be 100%, I need her to be by my side.
Okay. So coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody is coachable. I coached basketball for over 20 years, and believe me, I associated with sports, and not everybody is coachable. So how do you, as a person who's trying to coach me into fundraising, which something I hate doing, know I have to do it, but something I truly detest, how do you, I guess my first question is everybody coachable? And two, how do you help someone like me overcome those anxieties or pitfalls or even triggers when it comes to being coachable in the fundraising arena? Yeah.
So, my organization is like a campaign project management thing, but really I call it therapy for nonprofits. And so that's where my clients have me on 24/7. Like my EDs can call me or text me anytime. Because I recognize that support is really important, and we're all human. We all show up, whether you're going through divorce or a loss of a loved one. Like, we show up as humans. And in that comes, like, the gaps, and I call them the mindset gap. You have a skills gap, and you have a knowledge gap. Two of them can be taught. The other one, you need to decide on. And it's, as a coach, I help you see you have a mindset gap. And I'll tell you what those are. Your skills gap is, I have the information, I just don't have yet the experience to get the rhythm of it, the pattern, and the habit, and just being able to do it with my eyes closed. Like you can see a seasoned employee, teammate who knows how to do their job, easy. Then you have the knowledge gap. I have the skills, but I'm new on the job. There's a learning curve. I still need to get the information in to then be able to produce. And so those are the two that are easily coachable. The mindset gap is I have the skills, I have the knowledge, but I don't want to do it. And I think for a founder who's trying to fundraise or a fundraiser in a role at an organization, when you get stuck in a mindset gap, it really has to do with like, I know how to do this, but I think the mindset gap comes in with fear and imposter syndrome. How am I going to be perceived? Do I fit in? I struggled with that. It's real. And so you have to continuously remind yourself why it is that you do the work. And what I do with my clients is we talk about why are you in the mission, bringing them back to the mission moment. When every single time we have a board meeting, I always tell them, have a mission moment at the beginning to set the tone and remind everybody why we're sitting together for 90 minutes talking about this. So you also have to pick yourself up and remind yourself why you're doing the work. And ultimately, it's not the dollars. It's about connecting people to the mission. The mission should sell itself.
So Ruth is talking about some things that are definitely hit close to home. I had where I worked prior, the nonprofit I worked at prior to where I am now. The executive director hated being out in front. She really did. She loved doing the technical backside and making decisions and doing operations. She loved that, but she didn't want to be out front. So part of my job was to go out and do the speaking for our organization. And it's not that I didn't like it, because I truly love meeting people and listening to people and listening to their ideas. It's not that I didn't like it, but I was uncomfortable. I guess I was uncomfortable with maybe having to go back and ask those folks for funding or ask them to contribute. It's hard sometimes for folks to get past that, right?
Yeah, people have an issue asking for money because they feel like they're the ones asking for the money. And the way we show up is also what are our takes on financials? How do we view our own generosity? Again, we show up as a human to everything that we do. And so if you feel that you got the fundraising ick, and then it's going to block you, right? You have to remember, you're not the one asking for money. They're not paying your bills. Well, technically, if you're a founder, they probably will.
Sure.
But they're helping the mission. And so you need to get real sound on what your value proposition is and the mountain you're going to plant your flag on, why you're doing this thing, and really show up authentically.
So, I mean, you touched on something I think that's very, very important, because I felt that it was me personally asking for the dollars or asking them to contribute, and it wasn't. I couldn't step outside of myself. Now that you say that, I'm triggered all the way back to back then, you know what I mean, because we're talking about the early 2000s. Now I'm triggered. Thank you very much. I'm triggered because you just said something that's so important, because I always felt it was me. It was Cornell Cruz asking for the money, and not the organization of which I worked for.
Okay, so I'll say this, and I'm only going to speak for myself, right? I was the kid in foster care, and so when I did the fundraising, I wore that hat a lot, and it became like my identity. When I went on to a different mission, because I actually fundraised for the agency that took care of me for those 8 years. Okay. Easy segue, right? But when I went, I didn't know how to change that identity, and then I had to show just Ruth, and then that was uncomfortable. And yeah, it definitely felt like I'm asking for money myself. How am I being perceived? I'm Latina. I'm a woman. What are those things? You know, how am I? Do I fit in the circle? Am I dressed properly? And so that's why, you know, individuals get stuck on, do I have to act? I don't know what to do with my hands. What do I wear? And how do I talk? And again, I had to learn the hard way to show up authentically. And every single time I did that, those were the relationships and the transformational gifts that came in for the organizations I worked for.
Okay, so I need a recommendation, and for all our viewers out there, I think they need a recommendation as well. Is how do we get past that? How do we get past that understanding what you just articulated? How do we get past the thinking that I'm not asking for me, I'm asking for the organization and the services and needs that the organization provides in the community? How do we get to there?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so for me, I personally only work for organizations I believed in. And not that I don't believe in all nonprofits, but I had to have a personal passion project about it. Almost like I am the philanthropist, but I am using them as a partner. Sorry if that's the wrong word, using maybe. Partnering with a donor to move the mission forward in the area that I care about. Education. I worked for Miami-Dade, nonprofit capacity building. True North, classical education. So all these different missions were personally connected to me. And when I remembered, wait, we're partnering here with somebody who's in the community, who has the means, but I have the mission.
Yes.
I just saw it as, now I can do the thing I've always wanted to do, which was move impact through this specific nonprofit. And I just took out the personal out of it. I'm not going to lie, imposter syndrome does kick in every so often, even now as a coach. Generosity strategies, it's young, burgeoning, and thinking about, like, how do I show up? Somebody else is doing it better. And I had one coach, I'll never forget this. She gave me 2 nuggets. I repeat these to my clients all the time. One, she said, Ruth, you're like bread. Have you ever walked down a bread aisle? And I go, yeah. She goes, there's a whole aisle of bread. There's a wheat bread, there's a white bread, there's gluten-free bread. You could be one of a million breads in that aisle and you're fine. There's plenty of seats at the table, but take a seat. And that stuck with me, and I was like, ooh, because I struggle with perfectionism, which is where imposter syndrome also really kicks in.
Yes.
And I think about it, and I'm like, I am okay showing up the way that I am with what I have. So I say that to my nonprofits. Show up the way that you are with what you have, and your partners will come. You have to show up, and you have to express the impact of what it is that you're doing. And I think that's the part. It's the storytelling piece. So what I work with clients is, how do you actually show the work that you're doing? How do you actually show that $50 helps feed this child? And how do we do that in a way that feels authentic and not like you're begging, right?
You put it perfectly, not like you're begging.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any of us want to be portrayed that way.
No.
Let's take a break.